Have you ever felt someone's eyes on you? Not just a glance, something deeper. A gaze that lingers too long in your periphery that makes the hairs on your neck rise before you even know why? That feeling had haunted me for months before I understood. Little signs. The bathroom door slightly ajar when I knew I'd shut it. A robe folded the wrong way. My favorite perfume, only used on special occasions, faintly filling the room, though I hadn't touched the bottle. Then came that night. It was 2:37 a.m. I woke up parched, the kind of dry that makes you push past exhaustion. The house was silent, save for the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of old wood. I knew every inch of that place after 2 decades. No need for lights. My bare feet sank into the carpet as I walked toward the stairs. And then I saw it. A shape in the dark, motionless beyond the sliding glass door. Not a reflection. Not a dream. My adoptive son, Lucas Carter, was standing in the backyard, bathed in moonlight. But he wasn't looking outside, he was staring in. Toward me, for one terrifying second, our eyes locked in the glass. Then he vanished into the darkness of the house. I stood frozen, fingers clenched on the banister, my heart racing. My first instinct should have been to wake Tom Reynolds, my husband. But what paralyzed me wasn't fear of Lucas Carter. It was the truth I didn't want to admit. How many nights had he stood there? I kept it to myself. I told no one. Not even my therapist. Because something deeper than confusion was blooming inside me. Something I didn't yet understand. My name is Claire Elizabeth Whitmore. At 43, I had lived many lives: bride, graduate, grieving mother, wife. The mantle photos told the story. Smiles frozen in time. A perfect image of a life that had long stopped feeling like mine. The nursery in our home stayed untouched. A silent reminder of losses I never fully voiced. After years of fertility treatments, 2 miscarriages, and fading affection, Lucas Carter came into our lives unexpectedly, a quiet 15-year-old orphan by a tragic accident involving distant family. My husband agreed to take him in before I could even process the decision. I tried. I really did. I cooked his favorite meals, bought new sneakers, attended every parent-teacher conference. Lucas Carter was polite, reserved, always slightly out of reach. And over time, as he grew older, that emotional distance settled into our routine like old wallpaper. I stopped trying to be his mother when he turned 20. Tom Reynolds hardly noticed. He was busy chasing a version of himself he thought he'd lost: new car, hair transplants, fitness obsessions. He missed how the quiet between me and Lucas Carter turned into something strange. It began subtly. He'd show up in the hallway when I was about to change clothes, mumble an apology, and disappear. His laundry started mixing with mine. Little things went missing: lipstick, a silk scarf, small items that felt too personal to misplace. I told myself it was nothing, just awkwardness, just growing pains. But then I found something that made my chest tighten, tucked beneath Lucas Carter's mattress, something that didn't belong to him, a piece of my clothing, not misplaced, hidden. That's when the unease became something sharper. From then on, I noticed more. How his eyes lingered when I leaned over the table. How he'd show up at the pool when I was sunbathing alone. And most disturbingly, how I started noticing him back. I began taking more time choosing my clothes, tying my robe tighter, applying makeup I hadn't touched in years. And the worst part? I felt seen. After being invisible for so long, it unnerved me. Still, I didn't act on anything. I didn't even speak of it. Until the afternoon I found Lucas Carter's laptop left open on the couch. Something about the folder on the screen, just a name, just a date, made my fingers pause. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. What I found inside left me breathless. Photos. Dozens. Maybe more. Not candid family moments. Not innocent. Images captured through doors left slightly open. Windows misted with steam. Moments I had believed were mine alone. Brushing my hair. Reading on the couch. Walking out into the garden. He had been watching. For a long time. And I didn't scream. I didn't call Tom Reynolds. I just stared at the images. At myself. At a woman I barely recognized. Soft. Vulnerable. Caught in quiet moments. That's when I heard the front door. Lucas Carter stepped inside, rain dripping from his jacket. His eyes met mine. Then he saw the screen. He didn't speak. Just stared. You shouldn't have seen that, he finally said. Not angry. Not apologetic. Just certain. And everything changed. I should have said something. Closed the laptop. Pretended I hadn't seen anything. But I didn't. I sat there, the folder still open, heart thudding like a drum in a soundproof room. Lucas Carter didn't move. Neither did I. The silence stretched too long until it snapped. He stepped forward carefully. Slowly. I couldn't speak. My throat had dried up. My skin buzzing as if struck by static. He stood still, drenched, eyes locked on mine. I asked him, barely above a whisper. How long? 2 years, he said. His answer struck like a bell, echoing through my chest. 2 years. Of silent glances. Of walking past him, unaware. Of thinking I was alone. A part of me wanted to rewind everything. Say none of this ever happened. Another part, a darker, lonelier part, knew that wasn't true. I didn't tell Tom Reynolds. I didn't pack a bag or run. Instead I tried to act normal. I cleaned the house. Watered the plants. Made dinner. But nothing felt the same. Every room echoed differently. And Lucas Carter's presence had shifted from faint background static to a living pulse in the air. He didn't speak about that afternoon. Neither did I. But something between us had cracked. And whatever seeped through that crack lingered in every shared glance. Every accidental touch. One morning, while doing yoga in the living room, I felt it again, that gaze. I looked up. There he was at the top of the stairs, silent, watching. I said nothing. I could have shut the blinds. Changed the locks. Told Tom Reynolds to send him away. But I didn't. Instead, I adjusted my position. Finished my stretches. And wondered if I was still trying to pretend this wasn't happening, or if, deep down, I no longer wanted to. I hated the part of myself that felt more alive than it had in years. There was no physical line crossed again. No confrontation. But there was something worse. The daily, unspoken rhythm between us. A choreography of restraint and tension. We shared a kitchen. A hallway. Sometimes even silence over dinner. Tom Reynolds never noticed. He was busy planning his next triathlon. Or obsessing over his new protein powders. Lucas Carter and I had become ghosts in his world. Figments of a life he used to participate in. One Saturday afternoon, I texted Lucas Carter. I missed the quiet. The message sat there. Unread. Then it disappeared. I told myself I'd meant nothing by it. But that was a lie. The next evening, I passed by Lucas Carter's room. The door was slightly open. He was standing near his desk, scrolling through something on his phone. He didn't look up. I kept walking. That night, I dreamed of voices behind a closed door. Mine. His. Echoes of something that hadn't happened but could. 3 days later, Tom Reynolds asked me over breakfast, "Why's Lucas Carter been acting weird lately?" I stirred my coffee and smiled. Probably just stressed about graduation. I replied. He nodded, already halfway through an email on his phone. It amazed me how easily I could lie. I used to believe emotional affairs only happen when people were searching for something. But what if they start when you stop looking entirely, and someone simply notices you, even when they shouldn't? I stopped answering Lucas Carter's text after that. For a while, the space between us grew wider again. Cold. Empty. But still buzzing with everything unsaid. Until the morning I found an envelope on my nightstand. No note. No explanation. Inside, a single photo. Me alone curled up in bed. The sheets tangled. A vulnerable, quiet moment. On the back, a single line. This is who I see. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't kind. It was unsettling. It was a reminder. I sat with the photo for hours, thinking about all the moments I'd wanted someone to see me, and all the moments I wished I could disappear. Tom Reynolds came home that night with sushi and a bottle of wine. I smiled. Ate. Laughed in all the right places. But inside, a storm was building. A reckoning I could no longer delay. Because something had to break. And I was starting to me. I kept the photo. Not out of sentiment, but because I didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't throw it away. It felt like erasing a piece of something I hadn't even named yet. I didn't show it to anyone. I didn't mention it in therapy. I tucked it inside a book I hadn't read in years and tried to forget it was there. But forgetting isn't the same as letting go. The next few weeks were a quiet unraveling. Not of events but of certainty. Lucas Carter kept his distance. No more texts. No more long glances. But the silence between us no longer felt like absence. It felt like anticipation. And I hated that part of me waited for it. Tom Reynolds remained clueless. He noticed that I'd started changing rooms when I dressed. That I'd double-checked the locks. That I sometimes slept with the door shut. "You okay?" he'd ask. "I'm fine," I'd say, smiling. But I wasn't, because the silence was growing louder. And eventually, something always gives. It happened on a Thursday. A rainy one. The kind where everything feels suspended in gray. Tom Reynolds was working late. Lucas Carter had gone out that morning, leaving behind a cup of coffee and his wallet. I wasn't snooping, truly. I only picked it up because I thought he might need it. But then something slid out. A hotel keycard. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I stared at it, heart pounding in my throat. I wasn't sure what scared me more. What it meant. Or how fast my mind tried to explain it away. That night, I didn't speak to Lucas Carter. I went to bed early, curled up under the blankets like a child hiding from a monster. The next day, I found a note on the counter. You don't have to be afraid of the truth. I left it there. Saturday afternoon, while doing laundry, I found another slip of paper inside the dryer. What are we pretending not to know? I tore it up. Flushed the pieces. I wanted it to end. I wanted it all to stop. And yet, I didn't leave. I didn't confront him. I didn't confess to Tom Reynolds. Instead, I retreated. I busied myself with errands, recipes, podcasts about mindfulness. Anything to drown the noise of my own thoughts. But the silence wouldn't go. It waited at the base of the stairs. In the hallway. On the couch where he once left his laptop open. Then came the night I couldn't avoid him. Tom Reynolds was out of town for a conference. The house was quiet, save for the storm outside. I was in the kitchen, drying dishes, when I heard the door creak behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I saw your photo, Lucas Carter said softly. I froze. You shouldn't be here, I replied. I live here, he answered. I turned slowly. He stood across the room. Not threatening. Not apologetic. Just present. We stared at each other for what felt like a lifetime. I never meant to make you feel unsafe, he said. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was true. If any of it was. I'll delete everything, he continued. I already started. He reached into his pocket and slid a flash drive onto the counter. Everything I ever saved. You can do what you want with it. I stared at it. So small. So heavy with implication. And then, I asked. I'll leave if that's what you want. It should have been easy. To say yes. To tell him to go. To reclaim the stillness of a life that, while hollow, had at least been predictable. But nothing was easy anymore. I picked up the drive. I'll think about it, I said. He nodded, then walked away. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, the drive in my hand, trying to decide if destroying it would erase the past, or simply bury it deeper. By morning I still hadn't chosen. Because some truths aren't meant to be deleted. They're meant to be faced. And I was finally starting to realize. I couldn't outrun mine. I didn't open the flash drive. Not that night. Not the next day. I placed it in the drawer of my nightstand and let it sit like a ticking clock with no hands, waiting for a moment that might never come. Instead, I carried on as if nothing had happened. That's the thing about secrets. They can coexist with normalcy far longer than we like to admit. I made breakfast. I returned emails. I smiled at Tom Reynolds when he got back from his conference and said things like, "How was the flight?" As if the house hadn't nearly swallowed me whole while he was gone. Lucas Carter barely spoke to me. He stayed out longer. Ate less. We moved through the same space like ghosts. The stillness between us no longer hummed with tension, it echoed with finality. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks passed. Then one morning, Tom Reynolds stood in the kitchen holding a photo in his hand. His face was pale. His lips were parted, like he'd forgotten how to breathe. "Claire," he said, voice uneven. "Why was this on Lucas Carter's cloud backup?" I stared at the image. It was a photo of me, taken from behind the bedroom window, curled up in bed. I recognized it immediately. It was the one Lucas Carter had left on my pillow. Tom Reynolds flipped it over. "There are 37 others. And videos. Audio recordings. You didn't know." The lie came halfway up my throat. But it died there. I didn't answer. He stared at me, eyes widening with the kind of devastation that strips people clean. "Tell me this isn't what I think it is," he whispered. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't form the words. Not because I wanted to lie, but because there were no words that wouldn't destroy him. Tom Reynolds turned away like I'd slapped him. He walked to the living room, pulled the wedding portrait off the mantel and placed it face down on the shelf. Then he left. No shouting. No accusations. Just silence. That night I sat at the dining table alone, surrounded by photographs spilled like a crime scene. Lucas Carter's car was still in the driveway. I half expected him to run. Instead, he walked in calmly, set his bag down and looked at me. "You told him," he said flatly. "I didn't need to," I replied. He looked at the photos. Then back at me. "So what happens now?" "I don't know." We didn't speak again that evening. Tom Reynolds didn't come home. In the days that followed, everything unraveled quickly. Tom Reynolds filed for separation. I moved into a small apartment downtown, a one-bedroom above a laundromat, where the floor creaked and the walls whispered other people's stories through the vents. I didn't ask for anything in the divorce. Just space. Lucas Carter never contacted me. For a while I believed that was mercy. But silence is never empty. It holds echoes. Ghosts of choices and glances and long pauses that once pretended not to mean anything. 6 months later I received a package. No return address. Inside, my missing pearl earring. The silk nightgown I'd thought I'd misplaced. And a photo, not of me, of Tom Reynolds. He stood alone in the backyard of our old home, staring at the spot where the hammock used to be. The one we'd bought on our honeymoon. The one we never replaced. On the back in Lucas Carter's handwriting. "This is what you did to him." My knees buckled. I sat on the cold floor, holding that image like it might vanish if I let go. But it didn't. It stayed. Everything did. A few weeks later I ran into Tom Reynolds at the farmer's market. He looked thinner. Older. There was gray in his beard and something hollow in his eyes. We didn't hug. We didn't smile. "I loved you more than anything," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. "I'm sorry," he nodded once. Then walked away. I stood there, unmoving, as the scent of apples and rain hung in the air like a memory I didn't ask to relive. I went home and opened the flash drive. I watched every image. Every video. Every time-stamped recording. Not because I needed to relive it, but because I needed to face it. Every glance. Every choice. Every time I told myself this isn't real, and still acted like it was. I deleted the folder. Then I opened my phone, took a photo of myself in the bathroom mirror. No makeup, hair pulled back, lines around my eyes like little reminders of survival. I posted it with the caption, "This is who I am without you." Then I blocked Lucas Carter's number. Deleted his contact. Changed my email. Got a new phone. But some things you can't delete. Some damage isn't reversible. Some guilt doesn't evaporate. My therapist called it trauma. I called it consequence. Months passed. I started over in small ways, teaching English at the community center, volunteering on weekends, growing lavender on my windowsill. I began to rebuild, not my old life, but something entirely new. Something honest. Quiet. Earned. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I'd walked away sooner. If I'd spoken up. If I'd seen Lucas Carter's manipulation for what it was. An echo of my own unhealed grief, mistaken for intimacy. But regret is a poor architect. It builds nothing. And so I sit here now with my past behind me, my name still my own, and my future unclear. But finally mine.